All right, what's up, people? Um, Sometimes a promise takes a while to deliver, but what I want to talk about is three books in the New Testament, and I'll put them in order, and I'll try to explain why I do it this way, but this might be a long one. I don't fucking know. Um, so the three books are Hebrews, Paul's Epistle to the Romans, and the Apocalypse of John, aka the final book of the Bible, Revelation. And why I think they all have the same theme, but delivered differently. So let me drop the theme. That way this all makes sense. The theme is the superiority of Jesus as a not only a son of David, but as a high priest that presides over his own sacrifice in order to redeem humanity. To me, that's the ultimate gospel, if you will, of the New Testament. And I'm not talking the gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ultimate gospel. Most people probably don't know this, but I'm gonna tell you this. Early on, when they were trying to decide the canon of the New Testament, the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse of John, was very disputed in the councils. There were several councils ultimately leading up to Carthage. Did you know that Martin Luther, the father of the Protestant Reformation, actually wanted to remove that book and James from the Bible? Yeah, there's that. That's a little fact that you probably didn't fucking know. So, let me start with saying this, and this is I'm gonna say piss people off. This is probably gonna be like, well, you're wrong. I argue for an early date for the book of Hebrews. Notice I don't call it the epistle to the Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, or just Hebrews. I argue for a very early date for that text. That's just my opinion. From the scholars, from what I hear, it has the best Greek, not written by somebody named Luke, okay, in the New Testament. In my contrast, you have, the Apocalypse of John, which has some of the worst Greek. You know what I'm saying? And these are just the scholars talking. This ain't me, because I don't fucking, it's all Greek to me. You know what I'm saying? I don't read Greek. Fuck, man. They have a whole different alphabet and shit. But at least they write their shit the correct way, like, left to right instead of like the Hebrews, man. They write that shit right to left. Not the book of not the book of Hebrews. I'm saying the Old Testament. The shit in Hebrew. And then you have the book in between, which is Romans by Paul, which I think is Paul's masterpiece. But they're all talking about the same thing. And whereas I think Hebrews gets it probably the most subtly, and like if you're really smart, you'll get what's going on there. I think the Apocalypse is just like, it just blows it out of the fucking, like, top of your head. Because what you're looking at is, okay, if you actually read the Bible and you understand the story of Mount Moriah, and that was the mountain on which, Abraham took Isaac up to because he was told by God to kill his son, to sacrifice his son. And at the last minute, he was stopped. And he said, well, what about God will provide the lamb? And then if you look at where Jesus was actually killed, according to the New Testament, you gotta take like 3 steps to get there. But trust me, if you need the fucking citations, I can give them to you. I just don't have them offhand because you know me, I'm off cuff. But the thing is that Jesus was sacrificed on that same point, and that was a preface or a prefiguration, if you will. And so what all 3 of these authors do in different ways is they try to express that. I think Revelation does it most spectacularly because what you're seeing is, well, I mean, you might not be Catholic or nothing like that. I'm certainly not even a Christian, but I understand their shit. And the idea in Revelation is that what you're looking at, well, you're looking at a series of things. So like you have the 7 letters addressed to the 7 churches, et cetera, et cetera. You have the Whore of Babylon, you have all that shit, right? But what you also have is what might be called a divine mass, or if you're Catholic, you would know what a mass is. It's like a sacrifice that's rendered in perpetuity. You know what? Never fucking mind. Go look it up. You'll see it. You can find some really awesome fucking exegesis of this shit. To me, Revelation is the least significant, even though it's somewhat maybe the most beautiful in a sense. Because it's the most comic booky. You know what I'm saying? But then you have Romans. And in Romans, Paul is basically comparing Sarah and Hagar, who were, I believe it was Abraham's wife, Sarah, and his mistress or house servant or slave, whatever you want to call it, Hagar. So then you get the tribe of Israel, and then you get the tribe of what basically ultimately became the Arabs. But he used that whole narrative, which comes from, I believe, the book of Genesis. He uses that metaphorically to differentiate between the old and the new covenant and the superiority of the covenant of Jesus, right? Which goes back to the book of Hebrews, which again, I argue for an early date. I put it in the 60s, and a lot of people are like, man, you fucking tripping. That shit's fucking 2nd century. I don't know. I argue for an early date for Hebrews. I just do, despite the fact that the Greek is like almost flawless, according to the scholars. But in that book, what you have is you have shown that the priesthood of Jesus is superior to the priesthood of Aaron, or Aaron, as some people might say. Aaron, aka the brother of Moses, who was he was the foundation for the priesthood of Israel, of the nation of Israel, of the Jews. But there was this other guy that appeared briefly in the Old Testament. I think it was Genesis 15. I could be wrong. 15 maybe. I don't know. A guy named Melchizedek. And if you read it, I think he's only mentioned in 3 verses in the entire motherfucking Bible. Once is in Genesis, once is in Psalm 110, and then once is in Hebrews. Well, I mean, you got many in Hebrews, you know what I'm saying? Fuck. I'm in that mode where it's like the shit getting ready to cut off. So the thing about him is he comes from, he's parallel to a character named Enoch, who was the 7th from Adam. So he's without father, without mother. Even though Enoch had definitely a father and a mother, that's not a question. But he had no father, no mother, and he was a priest of El Elyon, who is God Most High. Now, this terminology is not really used that much. So when it's used, you got to be like, okay, well, something's going on here. You know what I'm saying? You got to pay attention. You got to sharpen. You got to sharpen your fucking pencil. You know what I'm saying? Well, it turns out that there's this entire fucking like pre-story to the fucking story of the Bible that you can find in like little corners of here and there and whatnot, the Ugaritic texts or whatever. I forget what they fucking, like they're collected. You got the Baal, it's called the Baal cycle, Baal, BA, and then there's a little, it would be called, it's called an IN, and then well, whatever. You know what I'm saying? He was a storm god, and he was a god of the fucking mountain, kind of like Yahweh, but they were both sons of this other motherfucker named El Elyon, who was God Most High. And Melchizedek was a priest of that motherfucker. And he blessed Abram. What did he bless him with? Hold on, wait for it. Drum roll, motherfuckers. For all you Catholics out there, bread and wine. You know what I'm saying? You Last Supper in the motherfucker, and you in the book of Genesis. Now, see, the thing is that even though I don't believe any of these fucking comic book stories to be real, I still love Superman. And I can understand all of this shit. But I'm going to say this as a finale to this video. In my opinion, the book of Hebrews is basically the entire concept of Christianity condensed perfectly. I think if you read that book, you will understand the entire fucking, I'm not going to say New Testament. It's new and old, but it's like, it's all working together from the very beginning. You know what I mean? Ever since Adam got his ass kicked out of the Garden of Eden. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's comic books. I can laugh at it, motherfucker. You don't have to, if you take it too seriously, then I don't know, something wrong with you taking it too seriously. But anywho, thanks for listening. Read those 3 books. I didn't emphasize Romans enough, but yeah. Oh, I did. Sarah and Hagar, yeah. And the old and the new law, and Paul was like kind of, how should I put this? What do you call that when somebody's fucking like, I'm going to call him a hypochondriac or something, but just kind of like neurotic. Yeah, Paul was neurotic. So if you read Paul and you understand he's got a neurosis, a specific type of neurosis, then it's like, oh shit, Paul makes perfect sense now. I understand him. When he talks about the okay. When he talks, I forget which letter it is. It might be Galatians, where he talks about he has some kind of, let's say it's a wound, but it's like he has some kind of infirmity of his flesh. And some people interpret that to mean that he was homosexual, or that he had some kind of like sexual problem. I don't fucking know. I just know that dude was neurotic. So when you read Paul, just understand that shit. Read Hebrews, appreciate the beauty of it. You don't have to believe anything that you see, hear, read, feel, or whatever. But just appreciate it.